All right, I am back. I am hoping that this one will actually work out this time and that persons will be able to hear me and I will be able to respond to you and everything will go smoothly. I really hope that this one will work out. So if it is that you are able to hear me, please just respond in the chat so I can know that you are able to hear me. Thank you. So if you're able to hear me, just respond in the chat for me, please. All right, so I'm just going to wait until 9 o'clock, which is in another 2 minutes, and then I'm just going to do a quick recap of what was already done, and then I will move on from there. So if you're able to hear me, just respond in the chat, please, and just let me know so that I know that persons are actually hearing me and that I'm not just speaking to myself. So if you can hear me, just let me know. I really, really hope that this one will work out because I had some challenges with OBS earlier. I am hoping that I will not have that challenge again and things will just. All right, so I see that one person has joined. Other persons, if you are on, just send me a message in the chat, please, so that I can know that you are hearing me. All right. I'm just waiting a few minutes to see who will join and then we will continue. I really hope that the persons who were on before will be able to join again because it was going good and then, the devil stepped in and things were not as they ought to be. So I am not sure what happened, but if you're able to see and hear me, please just let me know. If this one doesn't work out, then I guess we will just have to call it a wrap and just move forward. All right, thanks for the responses. So I am going to just wait 2 minutes more and then I'll go on. So far we were looking at the fact that it is important to put God first in everything that we do. So in order for your marriage to be successful, it is important that God is first, he's at the center of the marriage, right? So God has to be at the forefront of everything in order for it to be successful. The other thing that we said, so I'm just recapping, and by the time other persons join, I'll move on to the remaining points. So spending too much time with friends and family when you're married can also be a problem. You need to dedicate some time to your spouse, right? You need to leave and cleave. Yes, you need to pay attention to your friends. You need to pay attention to your family members. But your spouse must be first and foremost in your marriage. So you have to dedicate time to nurture your marriage and to build your marriage. You need to spend time with your spouse, especially in a new marriage, a young marriage. Deception is another thing that can destroy marriage. Persons need to be truthful about who they are and not hide their true personality or be deceptive about things because these things can later damage the marriage when they're discovered. So it's important that there is no deception present in your marriage because these things foster problems, they create serious problems later on in the marriage. I also mentioned that long distance can be a very serious problem for marriage because long distance is something that affects how you are able to relate to each other and all of that. If you are getting married or if you're married, you should decide whether or not you want to be alone before you make that step, because if you are married, it means that you have to be in the same, or you should be in the same physical space with the person. And if you are away for any period of time, it should not be for an extended period of time, because that can also pose a threat to the marriage. So it's important that persons who are married, they are living together in the same space and not spending long periods of time away from each other, because when the cat is away, mice will play. All right. So another thing is a lack of forgiveness. Sometimes we want to be forgiven, but we don't want to forgive other people because we feel as though they should forgive us, but some things we just will not forgive them for. And a marriage requires the effort of both parties. So if you are not willing to forgive someone for something, and you continue to hold grudges or harbor hate in your heart towards that person, even if you remain physically in the marriage, mentally you may have checked out of the marriage a long time ago. So forgiveness is a vital part of keeping your marriage together. It is important that you forgive your spouse of sin. You are not perfect, your spouse is not perfect, so forgiveness is important. Selfishness. Just as God is selfless and considers our needs first, it doesn't mean that you are not to take care of you. It doesn't mean that you are not supposed to focus on building up yourself. But it is important that it's not just about me, myself, and I. You are no longer single, you're married. So it's important that you focus on the needs of your spouse as well. It cannot be that it's always about what you want and it's your way or the highway. It's a partnership, it's a marriage, it's a team effort. So you have to think about the importance of the spouse. You have to think about nurturing your marriage. So you cannot allow selfishness to take over your marriage, because selfishness is a recipe for disaster. All right. So another thing that is important is that you need to keep the spark in your marriage. So you're married, it doesn't mean that because you're married now you can cease to put in all effort. So the things that you used to do prior to marriage, the check-ins, the little messages that you would send throughout the day to see how your spouse is doing, the date nights, the surprises, all of those little things, they are still important and even more important to maintain your marriage. In addition to that, your spouse is coming in contact with different persons on a daily basis. Both the males and the females are coming in contact with different persons. Sometimes, as females, we tend to say that the males are visual and we are not. But if we are truthful, we do see the outward appearance of persons firstly. Before we see anything else, that is what we all see, right? So it is important that you keep the spark in your marriage. The way how you used to dress up and fix up yourself nicely before you got married, and gentlemen, the way how you used to, put in that effort for the wife when before she was your wife, because you wanted to win her heart and all of that. All of those things need to continue, and you need to continue to strengthen them. You need to build on your marriage. So don't leave those things out. It can't be that you're now married and so you start to behave like you're two old people, and every night you just come in and you're just tired and you just gone to your bed, and there is nothing, there's no spark, there's nothing to look forward to. It has become a drag. That will cause your marriage to fail. So it's important that you keep the spark in your marriage, that you keep things happy in your marriage. All right. The other problem is trying to change persons. Do not persons Some persons get married and say, oh, there are these problems, but they're going to get better when we get married. Those problems tend to get worse, or they don't improve. You cannot change an individual. So if you marry the person that way, do not try to change them. Only God can change us. That is not your job. So if you are comfortable, if you are not comfortable, if you're dating someone and you're not comfortable with certain things, don't force yourself to marry that person, because the problems that you are not comfortable with now, they're going to fester, they're going to annoy you, as the marriage progresses, and it's going to cause a problem. So it's better to leave that person alone if you are not comfortable, right? We can't fix people. That's not our job around here. So if you're not comfortable with the person, and if you are married to someone and they have certain tendencies and you knew of it before, you cannot change the person. You're just going to frustrate yourself, you're going to frustrate the individual, and it's going to cause problem in the marriage. When you're constantly nagging someone, oh, this, why you can't do this way, why you can't do that, why you can't, the person is going to become annoyed and they're not going to want to even come home anymore. It may get to that stage where the person does not want to come home. You want your home space to be a haven. You want your home space to be a happy place. I mean, there's so many negative things in the world already. You don't want your marriage to be something that is contributing to unhappiness or discomfort, right? So you need to not try to change person. Discussing expectations. A lot of persons fail to discuss expectations prior to marriage, and it leads to failure in the marriage because persons go into marriage expecting certain things, but they fail to say what they expect prior to tying the knot. You need to discuss expectations. Some persons are afraid to have these conversations, but these are the conversations that you need to have before the marriage, because these conversations, they are really going to help you to determine, is this for me? So not discussing expectations, and then when you're married now, having those expectations not being met, it causes you to become agitated, it causes you to become frustrated, and then you want to leave the marriage. Discuss sexual expectations, discuss education, discuss financial expectations, religion. How are you going to raise your children? Do you want to have children or you don't want to have children? Is it that you want to go and study abroad? Do not wait until you're in the marriage to start discussing those things. These are things that need to be discussed before marriage so that both persons are on the same page, and it's not that the wife doesn't want any children and she didn't tell the husband, and now the husband decides that he definitely wants children and he decides to go outside, which I'm not saying that that's the wife's fault because we all have choices, but it is important to discuss expectations. Discuss sexual expectations. That is very important. Those things cause problems in marriage when persons don't feel like the expectations they had are being met. So make sure that you are clear about what the expectations are and see if it is something that you are willing to live with or not, and decide whether or not you want to move forward. So these things are very, very important. Living in arrangements and all of that. Another thing that destroys, yes, premarital counseling is very important, I believe, so that you can go through certain things. And, communication is key. You need to talk to the person that you are planning to marry. You need to have open discussions. You are planning to spend your life with this person. Nobody goes into marriage with the hope of divorce. Divorce happens, but people don't plan to divorce. So the fact that you're planning to spend your life with this person, it means that you need to have these discussions from the onset, right? A lack of intimacy in the marriage. I'm not talking about sexual intimacy now. I'm talking about being open with each other, being willing to talk to each other about certain things, spending time, genuine time, getting to know and understand the needs of each other. This is very important. Yes, this is very important that you get to know your partner, your spouse, in an intimate way, right? It should not just be about when persons decide to go to the bedroom that they talk about intimacy. Intimacy is more than that. It's about understanding, being able to have intellectual conversations, being able to uncover certain aspects of your spiritual life together. All of those things are vital. Working, working, working. We all want to make a good life. We all want to earn a living. However, working too much can affect your marriage in a negative way. So you leave in the mornings before your spouse gets up, and when you get back in the evenings, your spouse is at bed, right? Or for those persons who may be involved in church, you have to be careful that you are not so involved in church work that it takes time away from catering to the needs of your spouse. You shouldn't be cooking for the pastor more than how you're cooking for your husband. Something is wrong with that. If you realize that you are spending too much time in the work of the church, remember, church work does not necessarily mean that you have a relationship with God, and we have to be careful with that. Oh, this person is involved and so on. Being involved does not equal a relationship with God, and we have to be careful how you allow your involvement in church work and in temporal work to affect your marriage. So you have to strike that balance there. You cannot just be working, working, working. You will work to the death of your marriage. All right. Your spouse comes before your children. Sometimes when persons start having children because the children may be young and the children have certain needs, they neglect themselves and their spouse. So you don't bother to cater to the needs of your spouse at all. You don't bother to give your spouse that massage. You don't bother to, comb your hair and massage your face and, make sure that you're smelling nicely and that your spouse get a good meal, or just spending time probably watching a show together and talking. So you have to remember that the spouse comes before the children. Next to God is the spouse, so you cannot allow your children to take precedence. Yes, you love them and you want the best for them, but they're going to grow up and they're going to go on their own, start their own families, and then you may not necessarily be the center of their world anymore. So it's important that you strike the balance and know that your spouse should come before your children. All right. So the next thing is that you should not be sharing intimate aspects of your relationships with other people. You have to be careful how you do that and how you compare your spouse to other persons. You know the person that you married, you know the kind of personality, you know how that person is. So it should not be that now you are expecting them to operate like someone else, or you're discussing certain things with John Brown or Mary Jane, and their wife or husband operates a certain way, and you're saying, oh, why you can't be like this, why you can't be like that. Never you do that. That is a recipe for disaster. There are some aspects of your relationship that should only be kept between yourself and your spouse and God. And worst case, if you can't manage it, you go and seek help from a counselor. But you should not be discussing certain aspects of your relationship with a friend or even a family member. And remember, people, when you will forgive your spouse for something that they may have done to you, your family members will not necessarily forgive the spouse. So you have to be very careful to guard your spouse against what may come later on, because you're going to continue living with this person and you don't want any bad blood between your family and your spouse because you were going through a difficult period at some point in time. So be careful with that, with the comparison thing, and be careful who you share information with and the amount of information you share, and also be careful who you take advice from. Not because somebody has been married for many years means that they have mastered marriage. It is important that you are careful. If somebody, you notice certain things in their marriage not working so well based on your view from the outside, then that may not be the best person for you to take advice from. Because if they're not able to make their marriage work, then how is it that they are going to give you advice on how to fix your marriage? So we have to be careful with that. Marrying because of age, so you feel that, oh, I'm getting a little older now, so I need to get married for sure. You have to be careful with that, because sometimes when persons do that, they risk marrying persons that they really would not have married had they spent the time to get to know more about the person and to make a decision. So don't allow age to cause you to rush into marriage, right? Regardless of your age, you are going to have to live with this person and you are going to have to deal with the challenges that come with that. So sometimes when persons do that, we find that the marriages, they end up failing as a result of that. Are you all still hearing me? Are you all still with me? Just put a note in the chat and let me know if you're still hearing me, if you're still with me. Continue to share your views as well. I see some things here in the chat and I want you to just continue interacting with me so that I can know that you are still here. All right. Pregnancy. So, especially for persons who are Christians, all right, I see that you're here. Hi, Candice. All right, so especially for persons who are Christians and they may fall along the way and become pregnant, some persons automatically feel, oh, I got pregnant, I need to get married. Or even some persons within the church may say to them, you have to get married to this person. My response to that is no, 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 absolutely not. Not because you fell along the way or if you're out in the world and that happened, it means that this person is your spouse. This may not be the best man or woman for you to live with for the rest of your life. Yes, you made a mistake or you fell along the way, but it does not mean that because that happened, you should marry this person. This person may not be the ideal partner for you, and you have to be careful about how you go about making decisions based on those factors. So unless it is that you had prior discussions with this person and you really desire to have this person be your life partner, it is important that you don't just rush into a marriage with someone for the mere fact that you have become pregnant or the person, the male, because they are now going to be a father. It's important that you maintain, yes, arranged marriages. Some of those, where sometimes even well-meaning church members may say, oh, you need to get married and this brother is a good brother. Yes, or is a good sister. Yes, the person may be a good and upstanding person, but are you compatible? You are going to have to deal with the challenges that comes with this person. You are going to have to live with this person, not the persons who are suggesting that you marry them. So it's important that you talk to God. It's important that you weigh the pros and cons and decide if this is what you want. Do you love this person? Are you physically attracted to this person? If you are not, then why are you going to subject yourself to a life sentence? Because you are going to be with this person for life, or it's going to end in a divorce if things don't work out because you decided to marry the person based on what other person said, but you really didn't love the person. You really did not see a future with the person. You don't think the person is financially responsible or meeting the other expectations that you desire. Not because someone is in the same faith with you and is of a different gender or even in the same age group means that that person is the ideal spouse for you. So don't allow persons to tell you that, oh, this person is the one you are to marry, just so, and you just say, oh, he's a nice person. Are you physically attracted to the person? Do you love them? Think about all those things. So sometimes persons marry under those situations and the marriages do not work out. This goes for both ladies and gentlemen. Do not undermine your spouse. Your spouse may say things or do things that you're not in agreement with, and nobody is going to agree with everything that a person does. But it's important that you don't embarrass your spouse in public. You go in your quiet time and you speak to your spouse about the things that you have seen that you're not so comfortable with or that you need to talk to the person about, but you should not undermine your spouse. Do not publicly embarrass your spouse. Do not say negative things to your spouse in the presence of your children. If you have children or other family members, that will cause them to lose respect for your spouse and it will create tension in your marriage. And that is what the devil wants. He wants those kinds of things that create discord and break up marriages. So it's important that you don't undermine your spouse. I'm wrapping up now. I'm wrapping up. I have about two more points to share with you, and then I'll allow you to give me some feedback. All right. I think that large age gaps is also a problem in marriage and whether or not marriages always stand the test of time. When persons have huge age gaps between them, they are not necessarily able to relate to each other because sometimes they're from two different eras. They don't have the same interests and they cannot relate to each other, and distrust may come in to the space for different reasons. The wife could be the person's mother or grandmother, the husband could be, the person's father or grandfather. And these things, they may look okay on the surface, but these things do cause problems later on in many ways and may cause unhappiness in the marriage. So it is important that these large age gaps situation persons carefully consider them before they decide to delve into a marriage, because these things can cause marriages to become dysfunctional. And finally, your spouse is your helpmeet, not your helper. So your husband is not an ATM and your wife is not your maid. Both of you are there to help each other. Some of you may be stronger in some areas than others, right? So it is for you to help each other. It is not that the wife has to do all the cooking and the cleaning while the husband cock up and watch football all Sunday and leave the children for her to take care of as well. She's not your maid, she's your helpmeet. And it's not for the wife to just sit and look pretty and go for the husband to buy everything that she needs, and she does not try to do anything to contribute to the development of the marriage, right? It's important, even if you are working at home or you're in your relationship, you have decided that the wife is going to be a stay-at-home mom, that you still operate in a way that is virtuous. You still try to maintain certain things. You don't just go on a spending spree and cause the family to fall into financial difficulties unnecessarily and all of that. So these are some of the factors that really contribute, in my view. I've shared, I think, probably about 20 or so. I really didn't count them. But these are some of the factors that contribute to some of our marriages that are failing even within the churches, right? And it's important for those who are married to look into these things and see how the enemy is weaving his way into marriages. And for those of us who are not married and perhaps want to be married at some point, to see these things and to do the necessaries. We live in a world that's not perfect, but sometimes some things can really be avoided if we make an effort to just be a little bit more considerate, put a little more effort in, and not just think about ourselves. So I'm gonna just open the floor now in the chat, for you to put your comments, for you to share if you agree with what I've said, if there's anything that you disagree with, anything that you think, as if there are any older persons here who are married and you can share. When I say older, I don't necessarily mean old, but persons who have been married for, maybe 5 years and more, and you want to share things that you believe have helped your marriage to grow and to stay afloat, you can just share those things in the chat and I will just share them along and respond. So I am finished sharing my points. Thank you for tuning in. Please share your points next week. I will be tuning in at the same time at 8 o'clock. Hopefully all goes well. And we'll be looking at mental health issues and how that is dealt with here in Jamaica, how we respond to persons who are mentally ill, how we treat persons who we consider to be mad people, even though some of them may just be homeless, or even our own relatives or, persons within our community that may have mental health challenges. How do we really deal with those persons? So we will look at that next week. All right, so you can just type your comments in the chat, people, and I will see what you have to say. I see some names here. Let me just give a shout out to those I'm seeing. I'm seeing Tamara Newman, Katie and Gordon, Mona Brown, Gavin Champagny, Kimmy Wilson, Sharon Farquharson Portius, Candice Andrews. I'm seeing Manta Views. I hope I haven't missed anyone, but those are the persons that I'm seeing. So you can just share. I'm going to close out in another 3 minutes at 9:30. So I just want you to share with me at this time. We had prayed before we started, so when I resumed here, I didn't bother to do that again. But we had in fact prayed before we started when we were on the other one before it went off. So can you just share with me now, please, in the chat? Come on, people, don't be afraid now. Don't be afraid. I don't want to just be here talking and then any recommendations re age gap. Well, I personally don't think that it is wise to go beyond an age difference of, say, 8 to 10 years. There are persons who may feel different, but I feel that when the age gap is too wide, it can cause problems and you don't really get to grow together. Other persons can share their views on that if they agree or disagree. But I think we have to be cautious about those large age gaps and expectations based on those age gaps. All right, so we have just a minute to go. It's 9:29. I'm going to close out at exactly 9:30. I know it's a work night and persons have work tomorrow. And for those in the Eastern Caribbean, I know that it's already after 10 there. So I don't want to keep you on much longer. So I'm going to close out in another minute. But if you have anything else to say, please feel free to share the link with others even after we have finished here so that they can benefit from this session. And please feel free to also just subscribe to the channel as well. Your subscriptions are appreciated, so please go ahead and subscribe to the channel so that you and hit the notification bell so that you will know when other videos or lives are being done and you will not miss anything. Thanks again for joining. I am going to keep my word. It's now 9:30, so I'm going to stop streaming. Have a great night, and I do hope that this session has benefited you and you'll be able to strengthen your marriages and prepare for marriage for those who are planning to move into that phase at some point. Have a great night.